Allah, there is no God but Allah. Allah is great.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome. We are continuing with the series of True Peace, the Secret of Life. And in this series, we've been looking at the world's fastest growing religion and this most sustainable belief system in the entire universe, and that is Islam. So if you've joined the series, we're giving you a basic introduction to what Islam is all about, but we're looking at Islam as a sustainable belief system. That it's not just a religion which is based on only one concept, but it's made up of many different facets, like the petals of a rose, for example, or flower. If the flower was just the middle, it wouldn't be very attractive, but there's so much more to a flower than just the middle of the flower, or the stamen. So Islam is made up of many different parts. And so this is what we are looking at this series. So far we've looked at Islam as a belief system, is what we hope for, the hope that we have in Islam. We've looked at the education. We've looked at the spiritual system that makes up Islam. We've looked at how we as Muslims are supposed to be moral creatures and how we are supposed to deal with one another. And now we are looking in this episode, inshallah, today, on human responsibilities. Last time, we spoke about how we as humans need to be responsible towards our society. And the way we spoke last time was that we need to have responsibilities towards the poor, those who are in need, how to give charity, and how charity is a human responsibility. We also spoke last time on how we as humans, as part of our human responsibility, need to give respect, and we need to be responsible stewards to Allah. Allah who created us from nothing and gave us this world, gave us this planet to live on. Because Allah has given us this life to live, He has made us different from the rest of His creations. But there are certain rights that we have as human beings that Allah has given us. And today, inshallah, we'll be looking at those rights or those responsibilities. Remember, I said that I prefer not to use rights, but rather the word responsibility. What are the responsibilities of a husband? In the Quran and in the Hadith, we have many different descriptions about the responsibility of a husband to the wife to the husband, the wife to the children. Inshallah, that's what we're going to be looking at today. So what are the responsibilities of the husband? The responsibility of the husband is to live in a moderate and nice way with his family and his community. In other words, he mustn't be a person who is an extremist, going from one extreme to the other, losing his temper, being angry, being violent. And this we can read in Surah Nisa in Ayah 19. So it talks about how we need to live in a moderate and nice way as a husband. Also speaks about how the responsibility of a husband is to save his family from the hellfire. How he is to be the one who is to guide and teach. As the head of the family, it is his responsibilities to steer his family clear from the hellfire, not to allow them to do things that will lead them to the hellfire. Today we live in a world where people are compromising, where parents are told, don't correct your children, don't tell your daughter or your son who is now experimenting in different sexualities, or experimenting with drugs, or experimenting with alcohol, or experimenting with steroids. We say to them, no, don't be strict on them. They're going through a phase. It is your responsibility as a father to prevent that from happening, because if he dies, he is going to the hellfire, and you will be held responsible for that. You will be the cause of that happening. You are not your children's friend. You are not your children's buddy. You are not your children's brother. You are your children's father. And if they hate you and they don't like you, then that's the way it's going to be. You have a responsibility. Trust me. Believe me on this. They may hate you now, but they will love you one day. They may hate what you say now. Your child might say to you, I hate you, father. I hate you, daddy. I hate you, papa. Whatever he might call you. It's better that he says that than for you to be the cause of your child dying and being taken to the hellfire. It is better that he hates you. So it is your responsibility to save them from the hellfire. It is your responsibility as a husband to be the best to your wife, better than anyone else can possibly be to your wife. Your wife has chosen you of all the men on the earth, or you have chosen her of all the women. So therefore, you need to be the best you can possibly be to her. It's your responsibility to be kind and compassionate and nice to her, not to be a dictator. You're not running a regime. You're running a household. And therefore, you need to have responsibility towards your family and being compassionate and kind towards them. Your responsibility is to provide for their food. It is your responsibility to provide for their clothing. It is your responsibility to provide for their shelter. There is nothing worse than when I hear that a man expects his wife, and I've heard this in South Africa, it's common practice, and sadly to say, I don't know what type of Muslims these men think they are, that at the end of the month when the wife is earning, they go to the wife and they say, you need to pay for the rent, you need to pay your part for the shelter, and you need to pay your part for the food. It is your responsibility as a man to pay for the food, the shelter, and the clothes. If your wife chooses out of her own free will to participate in that, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, you have got a good wife that does it. But you do not demand it and go to her like your rent is due. Why have you not paid your rent, wife? This is what's happening in certain parts of the world. And this is not what your responsibility as a human male is, as a husband is. As a husband, it is your duty to look after them. If your wife chooses to do that, then you have a good wife, and then you must thank Allah for that. But it is not her responsibility. It is your responsibility to do that. And if you're a man who's telling your wife she must pay half the rent, she must pay half the electricity and all that, and you're making her do that, you need to re-look at yourself. You need to ask yourself what type of Muslim you are, because it is your responsibility. It's different. Understand me. Please do not send me emails with the other things on it. Please understand, if she chooses out of her own free will, then that's different. It is your responsibility as a husband, it is your right as a husband to be that type of person who is often forgiving, that excuses the mistakes of others, that forgives those who are misguided, to give those people a second chance. It is your right to receive forgiveness, just as it is your right to give forgiveness. And these are the rights that a husband has. What about the rights of the wife? The wife has responsibilities. The wife has responsibilities over the household. She has responsibility over the children. Her responsibility is to be obedient to her husband and to watch that he does not overspend in his wealth. So it's the wife's right to make sure that his wealth is protected. Amazing that sometimes we tell our wives, don't tell me how to spend my money. But it is her right for her to actually protect your wealth, to make sure that you do not lose your wealth. It is the right of the wife to watch over the property. It is the right of the wife to look after the affairs of the home. And this is a very, very big responsibility. How many times do you see in Western society where the house just falls apart, where the husband gets into debt, where the building ends up losing its value because nobody's taking care of it? Here, a woman has the right to take control of those things and to make sure that the affairs of the home are run correctly. And a husband and the wife work together as a unit. And so it is the rights of the wife and the rights of the husband to work as a unit together. You know, I remember a couple of years ago believing that a successful marriage, and I use the past tense, a successful marriage is when a woman gives 50% and a man gives 50%. And together that 50% makes 100%. Now I realize that it's not like that. That means you're keeping 50% back for yourself. You both give 100%, and it's fine if there's overlaps, and it's fine if you're over-giving, because this is a way to be successful. This is a way for you both to be in partnership in the marriage, where you both, it's a give and a give and a give. It's not a give and take, it's a give and a give and a give. Don't be a scorekeeper in your marriage. You know, some people have a scorekeeper, like, you did this, so you owe me that. I did that, so you owe me this. That's not how it must be. You must do it like you would for the sake of Allah, with a true heart, with sincerity, with true commitment to that marriage. In the same way as you would when you're committing to Allah, that you're doing it out of sincerity. Be sincere in everything that you do. So there are human responsibilities that we have. There are responsibilities that children have over mom and dad. There are responsibilities that children have and rights that children have over mom and dad. One of those rights is to save mom and dad from the hellfire. It's your responsibility. If you're listening, youngster, it's your responsibility to save your mom and dad, your mother and your father, your parents, your ma and your pa, whatever you want to call them, from the hellfire. It's your responsibility to make sure they're not going into error. Mom and dad might have got very lazy lately. Maybe you're the only one in your house that is waking up for Fajr. It's your duty to wake, it's your command, it's your responsibility to wake them up, to go and knock on their door and wake them up. Obviously you have to have respect because you're under their shelter, but do it in a nice way, do it in a kind way. Say, Dad, don't you want to come with me to mosque? Even if you have to use an excuse and say, listen, I need someone to be my bodyguard when I walk because I'm scared of walking alone in the morning. Find a way to get them to come with you to the mosque. Make sure your mother is fasting during the month of Ramadan. Sometimes mom is so busy preparing food during Ramadan that she forgets to actually keep Ramadan. You know, for the evening, she's so busy with that she actually forgets about the other things. Well, that reminds me it's time for us to take a break. And when we get back from the break, we'll continue, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome back. We are continuing with human responsibilities or rights that we have as human beings over one another and the rights that we as parents have over our children and what our children have over us. And we're busy dealing with the rights of children or the responsibility of children over us. And we said that children's responsibility or our youth's responsibility is to save us from the hellfire if we are going into error. The children also have other responsibilities, the responsibility of making sure that they protect the rights of their brothers or sisters, the responsibility they have to looking after the environment that they have been entrusted with, the responsibility of caring for the elderly, the responsibility of caring for the neighbors, the responsibility for visiting those relatives that are far away or those relatives that are sick or in need. So we all have responsibilities, we all have rights over one another. So in Islam we see that Islam has a lot to do with how we need to be responsible to our community, how we need to be responsible to our neighbors, how we need to be responsible to our relatives. And there are so many things that you can read about the right and the responsibility of the husband to the wife, the responsibility of your neighbor over you, your responsibility of your community over you. And these you must go and research. These you must read up online. These are things that you must understand as Muslims. But I'm going to go through all those many different rights that we have or many responsibilities that we have as Muslims. But I'm going to move ahead to something else that I believe is important. And when we talk about rights or we talk about responsibilities, and that is the rights of fellow Muslims, the responsibility of fellow Muslims. It says in Bukhari the following: Muslims are like building blocks of a big structure, each one supporting the other. So Muslims are like the building blocks of a big structure. Each one of them supports it. We all need to work together. We all are part of the same ummah. We don't work in isolation to one another. We need to be there for each other. Muslims are there to help each other along. Even though you may have the right to do certain things, we are trying to help each other along. So don't always pull out, the card that says, well, you have to do this. We should be compassionate. We should be kind. You might see, for example, now I'll give you an example. There is a very good brother who has an amazing website. He is a well-known scholar. I'm not going to mention who he is, but he's a very well-known scholar. He's well-known to everybody on Peace TV. He has a fantastic website where he answers questions. People send their questions in and he answers their questions. One day he was asked a question, a controversial question, that had to do with a certain grouping within Islam. And when he answered the question in an honest and sincere way, the people got very upset with the way he answered the question. And so what they did is they tried to attack him. And so they started to make personal attacks against the man, yet he had done nothing wrong, simply because he answered a question that they did not like that specific group. They had the right to answer in that way. But was it the right thing to do? Surely they should have used a little bit of more common sense. What is common sense? It's that thing that was given to all of us. If it wasn't common, it wouldn't be called common sense. We're all given common sense. Surely the better thing to do was to write to that brother in a nice way. Say, brother, you know you have done such a great job for the Muslim Ummah. You have done so many wonderful programs that we benefited from. But you made this comment about this certain group. And I'd like to ask that perhaps you explain yourself a little bit more, because maybe I didn't understand it. Wouldn't that be a better approach to do? Then instead of becoming antagonistic and becoming angry and writing these things that go all over the internet and causing dissension, it is far better to use wisdom, even though it is your right. So we have rights and responsibility. See, that's the difference. That's why I don't like the word rights, because sometimes we use this word rights and it gives this idea of militancy, like I have my right to do this. But if we use the word, it is my responsibility, see how it softens everything. It changes the perspective, the way we speak, the way we think about things. You know, in my country, we fought for the rights of the people. We wanted human rights. Everybody wanted a one man, one vote. We all wanted the right to own property. We all wanted rights, rights, rights. And when they got those rights, when we all got those rights to be able to vote, when we all got those rights to own property, we forgot about responsibility. And the poor were still left poor, and the fat cats who were in Parliament just got fatter. Those people in Parliament, the only thing that changed was their bank balance. The laws in the country remained the same. The dictators remained the same. Everything remained exactly the same way it was before, because they didn't take human responsibilities forward. They took only rights forward. And this is why we need to be careful when we talk about human rights. We need to understand that human rights come with responsibility. And therefore, we as human beings need to be responsible one to the other. And this is the message of Islam. The message of Islam is that we must be responsible stewards on planet Earth. We must be stewards that look after the environment. You know, I remember hearing a talk a number of years ago where people were talking about, you know, do you ever think that things are going to change on this earth? Look, especially when it comes to animals. You know, we're killing off so many animal species. We're killing off plants. We are destroying the rivers. We are destroying the mountains. Do you think it'll ever change? And somebody said, well, we need to have animal rights. And I said to him, well, there are animal rights. There's animal activists all over. You know, there are people like PETA. There are people like the ASPCA, all these different groups that are protecting animal rights. But what is actually happening with these things? Nothing. Organizations like the ASPCA, it costs you more to take the animal from the shelter than to go buy one from a private breeder. So you need to think about what you're doing if you're really caring about the animals. But in Islam, we don't have such a thing as animal rights. We have animal responsibility. Animals have rights over us. In Islam, there's a thing called animal responsibility. Animals have the right to be cared for kindly. Animals have the right to have correct housing. They are not permitted to be put into a tiny little cage with artificial light that never see the light of day. They have rights over us. They have a right to be outside. They have a right to eat proper food. They have a right to nutrition. They have a right to be fed. There is no such constitution if you look in these so-called animal activists or animal rights. We have animal responsibility in Islam. An animal has a right to be treated correctly. If an animal is killed for food, it has the right to be put down in a humane way, and it needs to be done quickly, without any fear. The animal that is already injured or hurt is not permitted to be injured or hurt. It has rights over you. So we don't find these in animal activism. We find this in Islam. Islam gives humans responsibilities towards looking after animals, and animals have rights over human beings. There is a reward in Islam for looking after animals, even an animal that is thirsty. And by giving an animal something to drink, you have fulfilled a need, you have fulfilled a requirement in Islam. You have fulfilled the requirement of looking after one of Allah's creation. So we have to be careful how we look after our environment, how we care for those animals around us. There is a difference between Allah's rights and humans' rights. Our responsibility is to thank Him for what He has given. He is the caretaker of everything that we see. He created everything that there is. Nothing will hold in place unless He ordains it to be held in place. The very breath that you take is the responsibility of Allah. He allows you to breathe in and out. You think you are breathing in and out, but at a moment it could stop. Allah chooses the hour and the second and the moment that things begin and things end. It is our responsibility to thank Allah for everything that we have been given. We as human beings have been given the greatest responsibility on earth, and that is to care for everything that we have been given, to care for our families, to care for our loved ones, to care about those people who are next door to us, who run us down, who speak badly about us, who degrade Islam, who make comments about Islam. It's our responsibility to convey the message of Islam to them in a proper manner, by good conduct. In this series so far, we have looked at how to have a good character, how to have good conduct, what our social responsibility is, how to be moral beings, how to pray, how to give zakat, how to fast in the month of Ramadan. We've looked at many aspects on what it means to be a Muslim. And you know what? We're not even halfway through the series. That's how much there is on how to be a good Muslim, how much there is that makes up a Muslim. Today we've looked at human responsibility, and we've looked at what we are supposed to be in this world today as Muslims. If you're not a Muslim and you're watching this program and you're finding that it's interesting, you didn't know that Islam consisted of all these things, that so many things were required of a Muslim, that so much makes up the religion, or should I say the belief system of Islam. You just thought that Islam was saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, but there's more to Islam than that. Saying La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah is very important, don't get me wrong, but there is so much more to Islam. So we've run out of time again. I just want to encourage you to join in again next time, where we learn more about ways that you can be a successful Muslim. So from me, Areeb Islam, till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa